on BBC One.
And that's after the late news this Christmas Eve, now on BBC One Northern Ireland with Reeta Chakrabarti.
Tonight, new leadership at the top of Manchester United as the British businessman Sir Jim Ratcliffe agrees a deal for a significant share in the club. The multi-billionaire chairman of Ineos will buy a 25% stake and will sit at the top table with the present owners, the Glazer brothers. Also on the programme tonight, the Hamas-led health ministry in Gaza says dozens of people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike. The chemical tanker in the Indian Ocean hit by a drone. The US military says the weapon was launched from Iran. And the story of a sports car icon and the man behind it is one of the big cinema releases this Christmas. After months of speculation about who might take over at Old Trafford, today came the announcement that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is buying a 25% stake in the Premier League club. Pending approval, it will be a deal worth more than £1 billion, in which he will take control of football operations, that is, hiring and firing managers and players. Sir Jim is the multi-billionaire founder of the Ineos petrochemical group and a lifelong fan of the club. For many supporters, it's the Christmas present they've been hoping for, as it could mean the end of the controlling interest of the Glazer family. Our sports editor Dan Rowan reports.
When Sir Jim Ratcliffe toured Old Trafford earlier this year, the British billionaire was hoping to buy Manchester United. Instead, he'll become a minority shareholder of the club he says he's always supported. The founder of petrochemicals giant Ineos, Ratcliffe's already invested in sailing and cycling teams and owns a third of Mercedes in Formula One. The owner of 2 football clubs, including Nice in France, Manchester-born Ratcliffe last year failed in a bid to buy Chelsea, at the time hinting to me that United was his real goal.
Some would argue you should be trying to buy the club that you grew up supporting.
Yes, I mean, I can understand that, but Manchester United is not for sale.
With its rich history,
they were supreme soccer champions of Europe,
legendary players, and dominance under managerial great Sir Alex Ferguson, United became a commercial powerhouse with a global fan base. But since 2005, it's been owned by the Glazer family, and after years of protests from fans unhappy with the club's debt, a lack of investment in Old Trafford and on-field decline, last season the Americans put the club up for sale. Qatari banker Sheikh Jassim wanted to buy it outright, but withdrew, leaving the way clear for Ratcliffe. One of United's top executives explained why fresh investment was needed.
We were doing this for a very positive reason. We know we've got real ambition and a plan at United, and we wanted to make sure that we attract the right investment to be able to deliver that ambition.
Ratcliffe has spent more than £1 billion acquiring 25% of United and taking control of the football side of the club's business, and many hope this represents a new era.
The Glazers have still got a controlling interest. They're very clever business people, and Jim Ratcliffe knows this deal isn't ideal, but he felt that it's the only deal that he could get done. It's a very complicated one. Is it better than nothing? I would like to think that yes, it is. I'd like to think that this heralds a brighter future for Manchester United, but that's the optimistic fan in me.
After a drawn-out and divisive process that's lasted more than a year now, many United fans will be dismayed that the Glazers remain in overall control here at Old Trafford. The challenge facing Sir Jim Ratcliffe to convince them that he is the man to lead a revival in the footballing fortunes of this club.
Ex-British cycling chief Sir Dave Brailsford oversees Ratcliffe's various sports teams and is set to have a key role at United, the pair experiencing mixed fortunes at Nice since Ineos bought it in 2019. Some environmental campaigners say the petrochemicals company uses sport to give it a more positive image, but those involved defend the investments.
What do you think Jim's motivation is?
He loves a challenge. Bigger than any, and that's, I guess, the drive for the America's Cup, and probably when you look at Man United, that's a team that's been struggling in recent years. There's no bigger challenge in sport right now than turning Man United round. So I think that's what drives Jim.
But 10 years have now passed since United last won the Premier League, and after a difficult start to this season, the challenge facing Ratcliffe is a formidable one. Dan Rowan, BBC News.
Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says at least 70 Palestinians have been killed by an Israeli strike on a refugee camp in central Gaza. Many of the injured at the Al-Maghazi camp were taken to a nearby hospital. Earlier, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his forces had no choice but to keep on fighting. Well, our correspondent Shaima Khalil is in Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank for us tonight. And Shaima, what more do we know about this latest strike?
Well, what we understand from the Hamas-run health ministry is that the airstrike hit a densely populated residential block in Al-Maghazi refugee camp in central Gaza, several buildings in very close proximity to one another. The health ministry spokesman, Ashraf Al-Qudra, has said that the death toll is very likely to rise given the number of families that were living in that area, but also the fact that many people are still stuck under the rubble. One man who lost his daughter, his son-in-law and his grandchildren in that strike said, "We'd been ordered to move from Gaza City because it wasn't safe, and we came to central Gaza to die." He said there's just nowhere safe in Gaza. Two big challenges are going to face the first responders and the medical teams. One is that we've heard from the Palestinian Red Crescent that because of the airstrike, the main road connecting Al-Maghazi, Al-Burej and Al-Nusrat refugee camps has been shut down. That's going to make it very difficult for ambulances and rescue teams to get there in time. But remember, hospitals in Gaza, most hospitals in Gaza have been struggling with no fuel, with very limited supply. So as the rescue operation struggles, so will the medical operation as well.
And Shaima, as I said, you're speaking to us from Bethlehem, which this Christmas is very different.
Very different, very somber, very subdued. All eyes are normally on Bethlehem because it glistens at this time of year. A huge Christmas tree was supposed to be behind me in Manger Square. It's not there. Instead, there is a nativity scene in the rubble as a tribute to the children of Gaza. The war in Gaza goes on, as we've seen the scenes tonight, but it's hit very close to home here as well.
A message from the children of Bethlehem to the world. The city looks nothing like its festive self this time of year. There are no celebrations, but there's lots of solidarity. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Pier Battista Pizzaballa, made a point of entering the Church of Nativity wearing the traditional black and white checkered Palestinian scarf.
There is no atmosphere of feast because we are in a war, terrible war, and we are here to pray, but also tonight to ask not just for the ceasefire. Ceasefire is not enough. We have to stop these hostilities and to turn the page, because violence generates only violence.
On days like this, Jawdat and his father would have been talking about Christmas preparations. Not this year. Jawdat's family is stuck in northern Gaza. He tries to reassure his father that he'll make it out alive and that they'll be together again. But his dad is overcome with grief. A week ago, Jawdat's grandmother Nahida was shot twice in the stomach. His aunt Summer rushed to help her and was shot in the head.
Hi, Khalti.
Your aunt. Jawdat's parents and relatives had been sheltering in the Holy Family Church. Now they've buried their loved ones there. The family blames Israeli snipers for their death. The IDF says it will continue its investigation. They're still shelling around us, his father tells me. Before he says goodbye, he has one last message for his son. May God be with you, my son, he says. Take care of your sisters. The war in Gaza weighs heavily on Bethlehem. Visitors from around the world would have been here by now.
It's empty. The city is empty from happiness, from joy, from kids, from Santa, from every celebration. There's no celebration this year.
We cannot be happy because, we are not in another side of the world. We are still in Palestine.
It's so difficult. We're really struggling. Look at Bethlehem. It's never been this way.
The atmosphere is heavy with absence. The absence of any features of celebration. The absence of
tourists, pilgrims who normally fill this square. Bethlehem is many miles away from the war in Gaza, but the pain is felt deeply here.
In Manger Square, a nativity scene in the rubble has replaced the giant Christmas tree, a tribute to the children in Gaza and a call to end their suffering. Shaima Khalil, BBC News, Bethlehem.
The US military says a drone which hit a chemical tanker in the Indian Ocean last night was launched from Iran. Iran has been accused of backing Houthi rebels in Yemen who've been attacking shipping in the Red Sea in recent weeks. The US says it's also shot down 4 drones in the same waters. The possibility of hostilities spreading further across the region will concern many international leaders, as Rob Watson reports.
Could the drone strike on this tanker being escorted to a port in India signal a dangerous new threat to shipping in the region and an escalation of Iran's involvement? Just a few days ago, a senior Iranian commander threatened to close the Mediterranean and Straits of Gibraltar, so the prospect has to be taken seriously. But its foreign minister claims escalation is not in Iran's interest.
For us, regional security is very important. We are not seeking to expand the scope of war. The solution to the problem is not to establish a so-called coalition in the Red Sea, but to stop the bloodshed of women, children and civilians in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank.
There have already been over 100 attacks on shipping in the Red Sea by the Iranian-backed Houthis based in Yemen. The US accuses Tehran of supporting and funding such attacks and is establishing a coalition to patrol the Red Sea to protect what it calls a threat to global trade, not just Israel's.
The Houthis aren't attacking just one country. They're really attacking the international community. They are attacking the economic well-being and prosperity of nations around the world.
The sophistication of Houthi attacks against shipping, including this extraordinary airborne assault on a vessel in the Red Sea, filmed by the attackers themselves, is already having an impact. Hundreds of ships have been diverted from the area at extra cost to owners and customers alike. But despite such attacks and rising tensions, both the US and Iran do seem anxious to avoid a wider war. But the shipping companies and their customers will be watching nervously. Rob Watson, BBC News.
4 months ago, the Christian community in Pakistan saw nearly 24 of their churches and many homes ransacked by protesters in the Punjab city of Jaranwala. In the aftermath, the government promised money to help rebuild. But as they prepare for Christmas, many are still living with the damage and the shock of the attack, as our Pakistan correspondent Caroline Davis reports.
Joy and Christmas hats. Familiar celebrations mask painful memories. Jaranwala's Christians have lost much this year. Saima lives in the only room left of her family home. Rebuilding is slow. Life in this charred space, exhausting.
We are tired now. In this one room, there is no facility. There is no light, no water, everything is finished. We don't have anything.
She and her family received 2 million rupees from the government, just over $7,000. She says that's not enough.
It takes a whole lifetime to build a house. Our parents saved each and every penny for the house, and now it's all burned. Whatever we had, you can look at the house. It's all burned. For 2 million rupees, you can't rebuild this whole house.
Jaranwala's authorities told us that the amount given to families was based on an assessment of the loss of each house. This is what caused that loss. Hundreds gathered in Jaranwala after 2 Christians were alleged to have desecrated the Quran, allegations of blasphemy. It turned violent. Churches, homes, burnt and ransacked. 4 months on, the authorities say all the churches have been rebuilt. This was the church. Now this looks completely different to the last time you were here, when the walls were completely blackened, and instead, of course, it's been completely redone. More than 350 were arrested, but none have yet stood trial. Do you think the police should have moved faster?
This is a process flaw. The biggest stakeholder may be public, but there's one hidden biggest stakeholder which has much more stakes than the people actually know. That is the police department, that is the government itself, because we want to show people that such like acts will not be tolerated in future. If we don't ensure justice in these cases, such like incidents will keep happening.
Prayers, thoughts on a better year. Buildings are repaired, but trust, they tell us, will take far longer. Caroline Davis, BBC News, Jaranwala.
King Charles will deliver the second Christmas message of his reign from a Buckingham Palace room decorated with a living Christmas tree. The King is a long-term environmental campaigner and the tree will be replanted after the broadcast. Natural and sustainable decorations feature on the tree, including pine cones and dried oranges. Now it's an iconic sports car that is instantly recognisable. Now the story of Ferrari and its founder is one of the big cinema releases this Christmas. The film stars Adam Driver as Enzo Ferrari, and Charlotte Gallagher went along to meet him.
It's the story of an Italian icon.
Two objects cannot occupy the same point in space.
How the car synonymous with speed, luxury and excess was born. This film takes you back to the early days of Ferrari, when the car firm and its founder, Enzo Ferrari, were in dire financial straits and struggling to stay on the road.
You have perhaps a crisis of identity.
The Star Wars and House of Gucci actor Adam Driver takes on the role of Enzo.
You lift, he passes. He won, you lost.
He had a great pride in being kind of a self-made person in a way, and maybe we both share a kind of manic or obsession with not getting lazy, you know, or constantly pushing and attention to detail.
Director Michael Mann has been trying to make this film for decades. His love of Ferrari dates back to the 1960s, when he was a young student in London.
I was standing in the rain on Brompton Road waiting for the bus, and somebody drove by and stopped at a light with a blue piece of sculpture that belonged in, you know, the Museum of Modern Art or something. And it was a 1967 Ferrari. It was a 275 GTB. And that's when I first really got interested in what that was.
The Marquis de Protego of Spain and Eddie Nelson America share a Ferrari.
The film is set in 1957, and Ferrari are risking it all on a lucrative but incredibly dangerous road race.
They were kind of these titan, heroic figures because the risk was so high. Am I willing to risk life for the sake of a win? Because that'll differentiate someone who wins and loses.
Yeah. Did it make you want to drive around in a Ferrari? Or is it like, as an actor, if you're trying to be inconspicuous, I suppose?
Ferrari's not your vehicle.
Yeah, big red Ferrari driving around. Hi, everybody.
Right. Well, I mean, when we did drive Ferraris, they're you know, movable pieces of art.
You were supposed to save him! Penelope Cruz stars as Enzo's wife, grieving the death of their son. Director Michael Mann was even given access to the family home for filming.
Everything we've shot in the film, many of them are actual. That is the family mausoleum that we were allowed to shoot in. That is the house. That is the barber. Adam's being shaved in that chair by the son of the barber who shaved Enzo.
Wow.
So there's a kind of an osmosis from all the authenticity that was around us.
Adam Driver may not own a Ferrari, but he did get to test one out for the film.
I only got to drive one of the cars that was in the movie, you know, for insurance reasons. And we didn't tell anybody that we went to an airstrip and the skin hadn't been put on the chassis yet, but I got to drive one of the cars that they're, I think the 801. And it's terrifying.
Michael Mann and Adam Driver are now used to critical and commercial success. They're hoping Ferrari will race to repeat that. Charlotte Gallagher, BBC News.
Well, that is all from me and the team, but there's plenty more on the BBC News website. From all of us, have a very happy Christmas. Good night.